At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, as well as Rapid Deploy and Carbine, and a big shout out to patrons, as always. Thank you for everything, for all the support, and especially all of you who are here listening, watching, supporting, sharing, all of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it more than you know. We are already going to be at the end of February. Man, we're going into March like a bat out of hell. It's going really fast, and there's a lot of different things that are going on, not just these amazing episodes with powerful stories, very impactful and all, but we're going into conference season, and there's going to be a lot of sessions that I'm doing, especially Imagine Listening, and more episodes. So every conference that I'm going to be at, I'm going to be recording episodes. So there's going to be tons of them that are going to be set up, and that just means more content for all of you, of these amazing stories from some amazing people who are doing a job that not many people can do, and that's being the most vital piece of public safety, and that's 911 dispatch, the thin gold line. So make sure to check all of that out, all of the new stuff that's coming up. And also for patrons, an added perk for patrons only is audio versions of the DRT, which is the Dispatchers Roundtable, as well as Open Mic Live. And that is a live broadcast that we do every Thursday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. There are a few times when I'm on the road that I will do them on a Saturday. I'll do a late night one, either at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. And either way, it's all in good fun. We share the lighter side of dispatch, and there's just a lot of funny stories, a lot of funny things that happen in 911 that you wouldn't think happen, but they do. And when they happen, whoa, it's pretty hilarious. But that's the Open Mic Live. Make sure to check that one out. Once again, that's a live broadcast that goes out throughout all of social media, and that is Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If the time ever changes, I make sure to let everybody know throughout social media. So my guest today, I'm excited to have on. We were just talking a little bit before we started here, and the lights turned off in the background, which was hilarious. It's always fun when that stuff happens, especially when we're doing the episode, or I'm doing an episode with a guest, and then it shuts off automatically. And it just makes it for a more fun time. So my guest today is Valerie. She's a training coordinator with the New River Valley Emergency Communications Regional Authority out of Virginia, or otherwise known as NRV 911.
That's
Welcome.
us. Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, that is a mouthful. That when you were saying it and when you said, I don't think you have time for it, I wasn't expecting it to be that long, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really long, and we don't answer the phone that way. Don't worry.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Right,
because that that would be interesting to say New River Valley Emergency Communications Regional Authority 911. Where's your emergency?
right. We actually, say an abbreviated version, and interestingly, recently someone complained about how long it was,
Like
and
a
it's
caller?
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting. Like, so on top of whatever emergency they had, or even if it was a
It
non-emergency,
wasn't an emergency, but
yeah,
once she didn't know what she was calling really,
yeah.
and so she asked me to elaborate. So when I did, then she told me it was too long. You asked.
Yeah. Oh man, that's pretty funny. Like, yeah, I'm calling because my neighbor's dog just keeps barking, keeps coming into my yard and everything. But you know what? On top of that, just let me tell you, the name of your guys' place is just way too long.
It's way too long. It's bugging me.
Yeah. Uh, like we'll take it up to the board. We'll let our bosses know. Thanks for that. Oh man. Well, you have about 24 years of experience, right? You're going on 24 years now.
I do.
Oh
It'll be
man.
24 in September.
Sheesh. That is awesome though, because there are few people, that go that far or even further than that. And for me, I went 13 and a half years, and then I ended up ending my dispatch career. Still in 911 though. I have about 20 or so years completely in public safety, having gone to the private sector to be an industry partner with 911 and then going on my own. But I applaud you. 24 years. Very well done. Very well done.
Thank you. It's been a long time.
Yeah, but you're the training coordinator there now, so we're going to get to this here because I'm sure there's a lot that went into you wanting to move up and into these different positions as well. But I want to go back in time first. Let's go to the very beginning. And how did you get involved in dispatch to begin with? Do you come from a public safety family,
I
or
don't.
you just kind of jumped right in?
It's I'm as green as they come. There's there's no military, there's no police, there's no firefighter in the family. I always wanted to be a teacher. So my children all got into school, and it was time for me to join the workforce. I was blessed to be a stay-at-home mom for 10 years.
Mhm.
And so when the youngest one went to a full day first grade, I need to find a job. And so I started looking, what am I going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Who am I? What's happening? And the first thing I looked at was the school system.
Mhm.
I have small children, and I got a job immediately as a teacher's aide, but I made them hold because at the same time I had started this path of looking at the dispatcher job. I saw in the paper, it just spoke to me, and I applied for it, and I ended up turning down the other job for this one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, wanting to, growing up, wanting to be, always a teacher and everything, and you had that opportunity,
I
and
did.
then you end up taking the other path.
So the teacher, I was going to be a teacher's aide,
Mhm.
and the teacher that I spoke with, she was like, "You're kidding me, right? Your children are in this school. You would have every day off with them. You would never have to worry about childcare." She just kept selling it hard to me, and I was like, I can't do it. There's something calling me in this other direction,
Mhm.
and I think that's where I'm supposed to be. And but I am a training coordinator, so there is a full circle. I'm still
Right.
teaching.
Yeah. Yeah. It came full circle. You ended up becoming a teacher either way, just in a different way.
Yeah,
I wonder though, was there anything, have you ever kind of reflected on your decision and thought back before that? And was there anything that happened whether it been, you calling 911 or something, early on in life or whatever, or, just an incident or something that kind of pushed you the other way? Or was it just simply, the challenge? Like you
It
wanted
was,
something just a little more challenging?
I think it was just total serendipity that
Yeah.
it fit me. I had the only thing I can say is I had a friend who was his wife was a dispatcher and he was a deputy. And when I was, talking about I've got to get a job,
Yeah.
they both said, "You make a great dispatcher. You really should think about it." And I was, what I don't what does that even mean?
Yeah.
What do you do? So I really walked into it blind, but I had this feeling that there was a place for who I was, and it turned out I was right. I mean, one of the questions in the interview was, and I don't think I'd ever heard the word multitasking in 1998, but they asked me about it,
Mhm.
and I can remember, they said something like, well, can you multitask? And I was like, well, I can breastfeed a baby and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while the kids are crying. So I think so. And I guess they hired me.
That's perfect, because I mean that kind of works in dispatch, the way you're explaining it, because sometimes we cater to the officers, which it's kind of like it can be, that comparison. Helping some of them out, sometimes a little too much, right? When you're
Doing
like,
it.
you can run this yourself. Why do you need me to
Yeah,
run it?
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Oh, that is
It
funny.
sounds better when I say it, I think,
Yes.
Your 1028 returns on a
That is excellent. Well, so then what was it like for you in the beginning? Like, did you have the opportunity to go and do like a sit along at all before, or did you just kind of jump right in and there come right on in?
I went to the interview and
Uh-huh.
then I sat and waited for government because you know how long and that takes, you know.
Yeah, it takes a couple minutes.
Did I get the job? Do they still remember me?
Yeah.
Um, and then after the interview, I was just invited in to talk to the chief,
Hmm.
and he sat there and tried to talk me out of it. And, you don't want this job. It's going to be stressful
Yeah.
and it's going to change you. And it's all these different things. And he's not wrong. And I said, no, I want it. This is where I need to be. And, I guess he was probably looking for that commitment, I guess,
Right.
thinking
Yeah.
now.
Kind of testing you to see, do you really want this? Like, this is, yeah, no, that's good that he was kind
Yeah,
of telling you that, because there's a lot of people that get into this who, and I'm only speaking from my experience, of course. There's a lot of folks that come in and they do a sit along, and nothing happens. Like for 2 or 3 hours, nothing is going on, so they're not getting a true depiction of what 911 is. But they go off of that, or they have a relative, brother or sister or whoever is in public safety, and they're like, yeah, you could do this, and they go in. But then when they take that first phone call and whack, then they're out of there, because they don't always tell them right away, this is what you're going to be getting into. They're just like, oh yeah, they're answering the phone, they're doing this or that, and it's not a true depiction. So I think that's
it's
cool that
true.
he actually was kind of telling you some of that stuff, and look where you're at now.
My only experience, I think, with the idea of 911 was
Hmm.
William Shatner when he had
Yes.
that show.
Yeah.
That was, I just thought, I've got to be ready. Every call is going to be really big, which turns out isn't true.
Right. And also slightly misleading, because in that show there's always a good outcome, and they
Oh,
show dispatch meeting,
mhm. Shaking hands.
everyone, yeah, shaking hands, kissing babies and everything,
Yeah.
and it's not like that. I mean, there are some occasions where you see in the news or the newspaper or whatever where there was a save and the family ends up going and meets, the dispatcher or call taker who has done it, which is awesome. I never got to experience that, but that's not to say that it doesn't happen, because it's out there, it's in the news and stuff. But
Sure.
watching that show and thinking, oh man, there's a good outcome every time. Nope.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what 911 is for. If they activated 911, well, then of course it's going to be okay.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't
uh,
work that way.
so you go through the hiring process, you end up getting the job and everything. What was training like? And actually, before we get to the training part, you're walking in that first time. What was that like for you? Like, how many people are working on the floor at the same time? How big is the area?
I worked for the town of Christiansburg before we consolidated. We're in a consolidation now.
Uh-huh.
And the town of Christiansburg is in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is about 390 square feet. And Christiansburg is like, I don't know, 5 miles or something. It's just it's a little burg.
So it's
with
just
some
blink of an
commercial
eye.
area. Maybe a little bigger than that.
Yeah.
They gave me a really ugly uniform and said, show up. And I did. And it was awful in these polyester pants. Do you know about this?
No. Tell me, please.
We wore navy blue polyester pants with a belt, not a gun belt, but definitely police issue. And then our shirts were pale blue with some dark blue accents. So kind of think prison or, I mean, no, what do we want to say? Crossing guards.
There you go.
Like that.
Okay. Yeah.
We had the little, it's not a bolero tie, but the little tie that was a snap.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Just like, I think back then McDonald's uniforms kind of looked like
that. I know exactly which ones you're talking about. I remember those commercials with the Fry Guys and everybody.
And we didn't wear hats. Thank you.
Yeah.
We had chevrons on our lapels.
Did you have big shoulder pads and a badge too?
We had a badge, which I still have.
Nice.
We had to wear the shiny shoes. It was something. I mean, you thought you were somebody.
I mean, that sounds pretty slick.
So I roll up in there and I'm like, what? Okay, let's do this. If I'm wearing these pants, I better get something out of it. It was bad. But
well, how many people are working on the floor at a time then when you're getting in there? Like, you walk in and you see everyone. Like, was it overwhelming at all when you first got in there?
Oh no, it was the smallest, tiniest little hole in the wall closet place. It was about the size of a large bathroom.
Really?
Yeah, it was real small. There were typically, if we were lucky, there were 2 people at a time. So while you're in training, there were 2 people because I was one of the people.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we worked by ourselves a lot once we were released.
Oh, I know the feeling, because when I first started out, it was a small police department, and it was just me for 8 hours. And I remember whenever I had to use the bathroom, I would key up on the radio and say, Frostproof 107, go ahead. I'm going to be 10-7 down the hall. And I was just saying, I'm going to be out of service down the hall a moment. And they knew that meant I needed to go use the restroom. But what was horrible was that the little bathroom was, it wasn't far from the door that went out into the lobby. And the lobby, like, someone would be standing there and it's just like a little pane of glass. And then me on the other side. But if I'm in the bathroom, I remember coming out one time and I remember just exhaling in general, not because I had a hard time in the bathroom, but just because I was just like, okay, let's continue the day. But somebody was standing there waiting for me to come out, and I turn around and look and they're like, you're back. I'm like, hi, how may I help you? How long have you been standing here? And I remember one person being like, long enough. I'm like, oh God. Okay.
Did you have like a little bell? Ding, ding, ding.
No, that was another thing. We didn't have a little bell at all. I had a little portable radio, but there was nothing for someone. So I never knew when someone would be there. So I would walk out and just, hi, how are you? What was it like for you then? If you were, and I'm assuming those 8 hours you were doing as well, or was it 12 hours?
We worked 8 hours back then. Mm-hmm. I developed a very large bladder and good friends on the police force, and just said, I'm going to need a break. Come in. Of course you had to say it on the radio because nobody had a cell phone back then. It was just be like, can you return to the station? And
right.
They knew it was like, oh, she's got to pee.
Oh yeah. the wonders of being on your own for 8 hours and
Right.
hoping that nothing happens while you're there or while you have
Yes.
to go to the bathroom, that is, because 911 doesn't stop. Those phone calls continue to come in. So you starting in a smaller area, then you being there with your trainer, and I'm assuming, as those who are watching right now, I'll show this, but those who are listening right now, I'm holding up my cord to my headphones because when I was training, and I'm sure it was the same with you, it was what we called the umbilical cord because we were hooked up to our trainers while we're on the phone so that they can hear us, but their microphone would be muted or hopefully muted. Because I've had a few times where we wouldn't have that button turned, and you would say something, and they'd be like, oh, "You're not muted! Like, hit the switch."
So I'm a tiny bit older than that. You have to go back a little bit further.
Okay, tell me.
That we didn't have headsets.
Oh,
Eventually, yes, we had the
yes,
umbilical cord, and now of course, we have push to talk wireless.
yes,
Yeah, we had, what looked like basically a business phone
mhm,
with maybe 3 incoming lines that we picked up the handset. And then we had another phone that was for 911. And it was that big, chunky, clunky thing
yes.
and had, a small Annie screen on it. And that's how I started. There was no headset to take off.
Well, so
You
for those
put your pencil down. That's what you did.
well, for those who are watching and listening right now who might not know what Annie is, what is that?
Automatic number identification, and then
Mhm.
of course location is the alley. Um, so when I started, people didn't have cell phones. There was
Yeah.
a time people didn't have cell phones, and so those 911 calls came from Mrs. Jones, 123 Main Street, and it would just provide you information.
See,
Uh,
and you started in 98, right? You
90,
said
98. Mhm.
98. So I started in 2001. And even in 2001, we didn't have an actual like CAD, a computer aided dispatch, where we would
Oh
type
yeah.
in all the stuff. We had a version of that, but it was because one of our dispatchers was going to college for computer technology and such and science, and he created a CAD, a version of CAD
Wow.
out of Excel. He used Microsoft Excel to create a version of CAD, and that's what we used. But
That's
the
pretty
radio,
amazing.
the radio that we had a big like gooseneck microphone, and we had to type in a 5-digit code just to make the tones go off.
Oh yeah. We had the gooseneck too, and we usually would pretend to have an order of fries, just kind of depressing it down because it just looked, I guess, like fast food when you would stand at the
Right.
counter. We when I first started, we still set the sirens, um, but they also had tones and pagers, and we had no CAD. We had this.
Isn't so isn't it funny though that even like now, or I've been out of dispatch for 8 years, and so when I was there though, I remember some of the newer folks, they would ask like, so what happens if the system goes down? And I would do the same thing just like you did. It's like, you use this and a piece of paper, and they're like, are you serious? Like, yeah, how else do you think this
Yeah.
is going to work? And I said, well, how do we get all that information back in? I was like, well, when the system comes back up, you type in everything that you've written down. So someone says that they're out on a complaint, you write it down and you mark down the time. And then afterward, you end up going in because they're going to need that complaint number. What? Like, yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And that is the most tedious data entry when you have to do that. Ugh.
Yes, and it's a pain, especially when the officers forget that the system is down and they're like, "Can you give me this number?" You're like, we already told you the system is down. You're gonna have to wait until 4 a.m. before it comes back up." Okay, Central. Like, Jesus, it's not. It's beyond our control, man. Like, there's nothing we can do. So when you first started out then and you're going through training, you said in the beginning, there was something that you felt like was calling you, towards that path and all. So when you started in your training, what was that like for you? Because now you're learning you're learning geography, you're learning like codes, you got to memorize like all of this different stuff, and you start getting into phone calls and everything else. What was that like for you in the beginning for the training process?
So the whole, I'm going to make a difference. That whole thing, just, you don't get to do that instantly.
Yes.
And that's sort of disappointing. And honestly, my training was just being immersed in this police culture and getting exposed to things I never knew. We had a family, the little child, every time mom and dad would fight, they lived very close. He would just run down and he would be in our lobby in that little window. And I didn't know that world existed.
Mm-hmm.
It was television to me, So the beginning of my training was just becoming so cognizant of how broken the world is, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then finding my way to, make the difference. But my training there were some DCJS objectives that my trainer, made sure she was able to sign off on. And then, lots of lecture. And then that great big NCIC book, we have Virginia's VSIN, but everybody knows NCIC.
Mm-hmm.
And the tests that she made me take, holy cow, there was no teaching. She gave me those 3 gigantic manuals, sent me to the basement, and gave me 10 tests. And okay, when you pass all these tests, you'll be done. So
Holy moly.
It was awful, but I got to read those really cool manuals and I learned a lot.
Yeah, for those who are watching and listening, those manuals, like she said, are enormous, and it's like reading the dictionary. I mean,
Ooh, yes.
it's not it's not fun. Like, it's not telling a story.
Not at all.
there's a lot of stuff you have to remember and memorize, especially when you're entering like a missing person, or child endangerment, or a warrant, or a stolen vehicle, or like a lot of different things that you have to make sure you have in there, or you can get in trouble like from the state or
Right.
for all of these different things if you don't put the right stuff in there, and if you don't answer someone's request on a warrant
Yes.
within like 3 times, you will get a phone call. You will get a phone call and they will be like, why aren't you answering this?
I've gotten a couple phone calls over the years, but only working at night by myself. So pretty good excuse.
I remember I got called once and they were asking me about it, and I said, I already sent it. I said, I don't know why you haven't seen it. I said, but it's the person on the other end who hasn't been responding the right way. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, no, you're right. It's not you. I'm like, okay, thanks, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get in trouble. But it's interesting too, hearing you talk about this and stuff, because my first hard call that I had when I was in dispatch, when I first started out on dispatch, was in my face. Like, it was, I always thought that first high priority call was going to be over the phone, because that was my job, right? That's what I was there to do, is to take these 911 calls and send out help, and to be able to use my voice to be able to help these folks that are calling in. But that very first one, it was a suicidal call, and the person had found her husband, but she came straight to the police department, and she ran inside, and she was telling us all of this, and it was right in my face, this going on. And the reason I say this in comparison is because of what you said, that there was domestic violence that was going on, and you were, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of sheltered to some of that stuff in a way, because this was your, right in front of your face, that you were dealing with all of this and learning about what really is going on sometimes in homes. It's like, commercials and stuff where you see, people are having the greatest time of their life or whatever, but it's behind the closed doors that you don't know, some of the stuff that's going on. So like in this case, you've got this child who's coming over just a few doors down, because mom and dad are fighting or whatever, and you have to deal with that, and you just start to think like, geez, what else is going on? How do I deal with this stuff? And I don't know how it was for you, but for me in the beginning, they told me you're going to be taking some kind of crazy calls or whatever, but I was never told like, this is a resource you should go to for your own self-care, or you should be doing this, or you should be doing that. But I also think too, it's not any blame on my superiors. That's just the way they came up as well.
Sure.
Was, you just deal with this and you continue to move on. So the cycle continues. It's folks like us having conversations like this that people end up listening and realize, yeah, that's not the way it should be. We should be confronting this. We should be talking more about this and letting people know this is what you're getting into. Kind of like the chief was telling you right off the bat, to make sure this was what you wanted to do. And then, you start getting into it and you find out more that's going on, like with this child that's coming in.
It's so nice to be this far down the line and be able to now equip people for something that, back then we didn't have a name for. We didn't call it vicarious trauma. We did, if you got to work and you sat in your car crying because the day before was so hard and you didn't think you could do it again, get in there. It's your job.
Right.
Let's go. You don't have time. You can be sad on your own time. And I'm not trying to say that the people I worked with were callous. I don't mean that. I just mean now we recognize how we can equip our dispatchers, our telecommunicators to be healthy and whole and proactively approach the situation. So
I think it's really good too that, kind of the generation that we come from in the sense of public safety, because it's like, for me, in a sense, I'm able to talk to my kids and stuff about what it was like before technology, like before the internet, because so like 94, 95, when the internet was really hitting with like America Online, I think my house and maybe another house in the small town that I grew up in, we were the only ones that had the internet. So we grew up without some stuff, but in the, as teenagers we started getting into more technology, and now it's, it's technology all over the place and everything, and we experienced both pieces. So in comparison, in the sense of dispatch, you and I, when we started, we were starting to go towards getting closer towards the end of that old guard, where it was thought, in some places it is still like that. I'm not saying that it's not, but things have changed. So we are, going into it where there was kind of that harshness, you're just going to get through, just go to the next call, just do whatever. And like, kind of like you were saying, cry in your own time, do whatever you need to do on your own time. But we also were going through it deep within, where everything started to change more, and it continues to change. So we're able to help those coming in to say, this is the way it was before, but you're going to learn from us, who had to learn the hard way, in a sense that, we didn't really talk about things, but then we did start to talk about things and realized it really helped us. And things have changed, and changed for, and continue to change for the better.
Oh yeah. The evolution of first of all, yeah, like you said, everything has blown up technology wise, and our obligations as a emergency communications officer are enormous, more enormous than they used to be. But we can also bring in our new staff and equip them for the future. So the girl who started today, I made sure that, one of the things I'm going to talk to you about is you have to keep being who you're being. Keep your friends. You have to find those things that bring you joy and keep doing them. You have to keep having that person to go back to be that person, because it was such an immersive time for me. I lost myself completely. I used all of my spare time to go on ride-alongs, and it made me great. It was very educational, and I developed wonderful relationships and created a second family for myself, because I was very lonely. I had moved to the area, my family, my children, and so it was was a new experience to be all alone and to have this new second family. But I lost myself. I just totally lost myself. I was completely identified as a dispatcher.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that, but I know now for me that there are so many layers to who I am that I want to keep all of those layers healthy. And
Right.
I lost a lot of them for a while.
It That makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of people who have said in different training sessions or just in general conversation, like you were saying as well, to keep the same friends, not to be fully immersed in it all the time, because then um, we don't realize that some of it is eating at us, right? Because we're so in that we don't realize certain things until we step back and experience other things with folks we used to hang out with, or family members, or whatever, or even just sitting and just chilling out and just not doing anything public safety or anything else. Then you realize, oh, maybe this took a hold of me and I just really didn't think about it. Or I didn't understand at the time. I was kind of the same way, where I noticed it more when I would come home and I would think that I was leaving everything at work, which was BS, because it's not what was happening. It was still there. I just wasn't confronting it. And so I found out the hard way. But once I started talking about it and kind of separating myself to a point, and really getting into like yoga and meditation and other things, that I started to feel better, because I almost felt like at a time, if I'm not doing all of this, what if my peers think that I'm turning my back on them? But it's not what it was. That was just in my head. That was just me
Mhm.
thinking that, because I would, talk to people and they'd be like, no, man, do your own thing. Like, we're
Right.
still going to be here. Like, okay, yeah, no, you're right. Okay, cool. I think it was like, I didn't want, yeah, I didn't want them to feel like I was turning my back on my public safety family. And it was just me. It was just me in my head that I was going too far. I was
I
thinking too much
definitely
into
did
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went totally the other way, and I now have, different systems in place in my life that make it work better. But one of them being Zumba, and I have a partner in Zumba, and she became a place where I could go remember who I was.
Mhm.
So she would remind me, if I was eaten up with something I could have done better, or uh, upset about the outcome of something. She could remind me that I was other things. I was a good
Mhm.
friend and a good mother, and a whole lot of other things about who I was. And it made all the difference to have somebody that could remind you who you are.
Yeah, and that's also good too, because as we're talking about this, we do get so consumed sometimes in some of those calls that are eating us up. We we blame ourselves for a lot of things, even though there are some cases where there's nothing else we could do but be that voice. We take it upon ourselves, and it just
Absolutely.
eats at us and eats at us. But then if you have a good support system, like that, having a friend like that to talk to you and be like, it doesn't that those decisions or whatever, it doesn't fully define you. This is not just who you are in one spot. You're doing an amazing job, a job that not many people can do, and you are doing good. You are, you're the good person, just like all of it. But we need that. We need to hear that every so often, because we just take on too much and it starts eating at us, and then when you don't confront it, then it gets worse.
Yeah. I guess I'm just really thankful that it's better today, that we're bringing people in and helping them
Hmm.
see that they can be a factor, be an incredible asset to our agency, but still have a life outside of here
Hmm.
and not have to take every call with them.
So on that note, and are there in these 24 years, going on 24 years now in public safety, are there any calls that you have taken that kind of stick with you? I'm sure there's a bunch of them, but just, and also, only if you feel comfortable talking about it. But any of those calls, these are the ones that people sometimes hold in, but when they start talking about it, it not only helps them feel better, but those who listen, a lot of them have sent messages in saying, I thought I was the only one who's dealing with that, and I realized that I'm not alone. And a lot of people learn from it.
So I almost, struggle to say, where do I start?
Yeah.
We've had line of duty deaths. We've had officer suicide. I've been through many, many things.
Hmm.
There is, however, a call. It was in November of 2011, and it is a very sad story, but I don't carry it as a sad story, and it's a remarkable thing. A little boy, he was 10 months old, he was being babysat, and he passed away, and it was, I won't go through all that part. It was
Sure.
very traumatic.
Hmm.
And our whole agency was just devastated. And his mother, and I can say her name, she's allowed me to share her story.
Hmm.
His name was CJ, and I have pictures of him in my office. And his mother's name was Katie.
Hmm.
And she and her family, after they buried CJ, they reached out to the first responders and wanted to be connected with the people that tried so hard to save him. And I have never seen anything like it. They came to us in all of this pain and reached out and said, "How are you?" That must have been so hard. Thank you for taking that call. They connected with us. They shared him with us. And I can't even put into words the way it impacted me and so many others. We had a toy drive that year, which they continue to have 10 years later at his grandma's school, in his name. And we've stayed close to Katie, and she's gotten married and has a lovely son. And I don't even, I'm not, my words fail me in explaining how she brought her tragedy to me and shared it in such a gracious way to teach me to move on, to move through, to forgive, to find some beauty in the pain. And I words fail me. I'm not doing it justice. She was a lovely example.
I can feel it though. I can feel it through you trying to explain this, and I can imagine, this family who's gone through, this heartache, this tragedy, this loss, but also at the same time knowing that all of you are hurting with them. And not everybody is like that. A lot of times, you take a call, something similar, and you move on. You continue, or at least try to move on, depending on the call. Sometimes the cries, the screams, or the situation, whatever, that sticks with you. There can be a trigger. You could see something on TV, or right in front of you, and out of nowhere it comes to you and you get emotional. And we don't always get a chance to talk to those folks. And in this situation, though, again, this family knew that you all were probably hurting as well. Not in exactly the same way as them, but definitely hurting still. And they came to you and asked if you were okay. That's amazing. Like
That doesn't
that's
happen,
powerful.
right?
No, it doesn't. That doesn't
So
happen.
that's happened one time. So this is not the norm, and that's why it's so miraculous and spectacular. It doesn't happen, and you can say it was fate or whatever you want to say, but the lessons, the life lessons, the love that I learned from Katie will never leave me. She is a part of my a part of how I approach my duties. She's a reminder that even when the outcome isn't right, that we're making a difference. So I she would probably be far more interesting to talk to than me about this, because she's just a miraculously amazing person. And for her to have taken all of that pain and turned it into healing for those of us that we didn't deserve it. We didn't do anything. We were just doing our job. Her kindness will never be lost on me.
I can imagine that this is good as well for new folks who come in, especially as you being the training coordinator. You can talk to them and share with them right off the bat certain things, or if being a new hire and such after taking a hard call, and them feeling like, is this all it's going to be? Like, is there ever going to be any closure or anything that comes with it? You've got this story, this experience that you can share with them and say, even though there are folks out there and you yourself having a hard time with this, listen to this, you take from this, I learned this or that. And that, like you said, it's something you're always going to have with you, and you're going to have that experience to be able to share with so many.
Yeah. It was an awful tragedy with a beautiful outcome. Can I say that? I don't know.
I would say that in a sense, yeah. I mean, it was an outcome in a way
Ultimately.
ultimately that everyone was able to find some sort of closure and heal from it, because we don't always get that. And I wonder if at the same time it helped them in a way heal by also, talking with all of you and making that connection.
It had to. We got to keep him with us, and they got to talk about him. We say his name, and he's not forgotten, and his life meant something, and that was important for them.
Right.
I know it was. So we just helped each other in just the most unconventional way, honestly.
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that story. And just, again, to be able to have that with you and to be able to share with others, it's just very impactful, powerful, everything. You're, with being a training coordinator and such, I mean, what was it that pushed you towards wanting to move up and become a training coordinator? Was it because of situations like this, or your own training, something that made you want to go further and help mold that next generation that's coming in?
I think there's a secession kind of feeling, like if I'm not here, somebody else has to do it, and I want them to do it well. I promise I turned off my email. I think for me, maybe part of it was my own training and knowing that the experience could be richer. And so someone who was hired right after me, about a year after me, she's now the operations manager here at NRV 911. We both became trainers fairly quickly in our agency, and we worked on creating a training manual and making it a little more uniform. And we were just flying on the wing and a prayer. We didn't know what we were doing, but we knew that something needed to be done. We knew that we needed to make, we were looking at these FTOs and their programs, and they had words on paper, and what's that? You're not just telling somebody how to answer the phone. And
Right.
So we worked on that together, and it was very helpful. It was successful. We trained people together. We did well there, and as time moved through and people retired and things like that, eventually I was a supervisor over there. And when we were going to the consolidation, my my dream was to just move into the training coordinator position. I knew that, what the structure was going to look like, and I I'm going to say something that some people maybe don't agree with, but I decided to manifest it.
Mhm.
And so I just decided that, that's where I was going. I'm the kind of person that would write a goal down on a piece of paper and then achieve it. That's how that works. And so I just started saying, well, when I'm the training coordinator there, here's some ideas that I'd like to do.
Mhm.
And later on, when we consolidate and I'm the training coordinator, and I made it happen. And then I got in here, and I know that I have a whole lot to learn. I don't. I have, a lot of dreams and visions, but I don't know it all. Not at all. So it's been a wonderful, interesting, terrifying journey.
Well, when you think back on this wonderful, terrifying journey that you've taken, just starting out, on the line, still doing a lot of that stuff as well, but going to supervisor, training coordinator, and everything. When you look back on your career, can you pinpoint a moment at all, whether it be a phone call or an incident or anything like that that happened throughout your career that it was almost like an aha moment, like, you know what, I'm in the right spot, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be? And I ask because, I mean, you had that choice at the very beginning on where to go, and something was pulling you towards public safety, and you're going on 24 years now. But if you look back and you think about it, was there ever a moment where you just knew that you were in the right spot?
I think a few times.
Hmm.
I don't know why this happened so much years ago and happens less now. And maybe it's because of cell phones and we're more connected. But there were more than one time
Hmm.
that in the dispatch office someone was arrested for a DUI or a shoplifting, and there were children in the car. And until um, DCJ, I'm sorry, until the Department of Social Services could take hold of those kids and get them placed, officers were like, I got to take this mom to jail. What do I do? And I was handed children.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that happened to anybody else. Was it just
Hmm.
randomly me? But in our agency, there was more than one occasion that I can't say their names. I don't know. I got a dirty little kid, and we sent somebody to the store to get diapers, and we changed their diaper and fed him a yogurt and waited for grandma to come pick him up. And it, it was just, it was a time to know that if it wasn't me, then who was going to do that?
Right.
And I felt equipped to do it. I don't know that everybody's equipped to take a stranger's child and change them, but you do what you have to do.
Right, exactly. And
Um,
I think, having the experience that you had, I'm a firm believer that there are experiences that we go through in our lifetime that assist us, whether it be in our job or other situations, because we have that experience. And you mentioned in the beginning, you coming to a place where you really didn't know anyone, and it was you and your kids, your family, or whatever. You've got this experience, and you say, if not you, then who, which is true, but also because you have that experience. Not that somebody who's never had kids or anything wouldn't do well. I'm sure they would do fine, but you would have just a little bit more, because of that experience. And you were in the right place.
I think you're right, and I don't think I ever thought of it that way. All I ever wanted to be, I said I wanted to be a teacher. All I ever wanted to be was a mother,
Hmm.
and so I'm now a grandmother, and those children are, my life.
Yeah.
So I'm probably always going to be about the children. So maybe that was it. I had I don't know, the know-how to be nurturing. I don't know. It just fell on me.
It's a it's amazing. It's an amazing thing, and it's an interesting job that we've done and continue to do, and sharing these stories is so good to be able to put them out there and for people to learn from them and for us to talk about it. For me, all these years doing this, it's been pretty therapeutic to, share these stories. Sometimes I'll share a story on an episode. I'm like, oh man, haven't thought about that call in a long time. I don't know where I pulled that one out of, but I think it's good for us to share and have conversations like this, especially when we're talking about mental health and wellness and stuff that we've learned, because there's a lot of people who are new coming into this. But not just that, there are folks in the general public who are also listening to this show who are learning from us, so that like when they call 911 and they get put on hold, they know that they're not just getting pulled on hold for no reason. There's 911 doesn't stop. There are other emergencies. So people are learning from this. There's also folks that are in the general public who listen, and it motivates them. Like they want to help people too. And they want to get into the profession as well and do the things that we have done or that you continue to do. It has been awesome to have you on here and to share your story. As we go into the wrap up of this episode, I want to ask, as your training coordinator, for anyone who is looking to get into this profession, and kind of reflecting as well, kind of looking back on how the chief was talking to you in the very beginning, what are some of the things that you would like someone to know that is getting into this profession now?
I think the most important thing is that every single day you will make a difference. And, people do the whole, I want to help people and that's why I want this job. And they're sincere and I believe them. I said the same thing. But then we lose sight and we think that we have to, solve a crime or thwart a bank robbery or, help find a child that's been abducted or whatever. And honestly, being in the role and being support to our staff and being the person that when someone calls, they don't feel stupid, they feel heard and valued, even if it's just what time is the parade. That is making a difference. And if everyone would understand that difference has so much value. I think we discount it because, those things are silly and, why are they using our resources for that and that kind of stuff. But those folks need us. That's why we're here. There are people who maybe they don't have the internet. Maybe they don't have the kind of critical thinking that we do. Maybe they don't have access to some of the resources that we have. And if we can just gently give someone a small gift, that's why we're here. And if it's directions to Walmart, so be it. You made a difference to somebody. And that's the power. That's where our power is, I think.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Thank you so much for being on. Holy moly. This was really good. Thank you. It was awesome to have you on and to share your story and your insight. And man, we're gonna have to do another one or do a dispatchers roundtable or something. This was really good. Thank you for being on.
Thanks.
I will be right back here with you in just one moment. For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, that is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine. And a big shout out, as always, to patrons. If you want to be a patron and to help support the show as well, you can check us out. And that's patreon.com/WTT podcast. Also, an added perk for patrons only is audio versions of the Dispatchers Roundtable, the DRT, as well as Open Mic Live. So there you sign up. There's also discounts to the store. There's swag that you get. There's a bunch of other things, bonus content, early episode releases. So make sure to check all that out. Once again, that is patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.